Hey everyone, it's Deja from CrochetEverAfter.com. Today I'm going to show you how to make the first couple rows of the high fidelity cowl, and I'm going to walk you through the varying widths of these chevrons that I've designed here, and also how you're going to change color when it's time to do so. So this is going to be it's pretty detailed for that first row, and then I'm going to show you how you can kind of go off pattern and just read what your stitches are so you don't have to keep looking at your pattern, but we'll get to all of that right now. Okay, so to begin our scarf, we're going to go ahead and put a slip knot on our hook. You'll notice this yarn is a little thicker. This is worsted weight, and I'm using that just for the ease of seeing the stitches. So I'm not using the fingering weight that the actual cowl is in, but you can also make this a bigger kind of infinity scarf if you wanted to substitute with the medium worsted. You'll see how much bigger it is once I get through the first couple of rows. So to begin, we're going to do 123 chains. And because this is a chevron pattern, we can't do foundation double crochets. We have to actually do the chains. So as always, you yarn over back to front, turn your hook down so it pulls easily through your previous chain, and then push it to your shaft. So yarn over, pull through, and push. We're going to do this 123 times. Okay, I finished my 123 chains, and I probably have like double the length, so this is an easy way to make a lengthwise chevron infinity scarf too, so that's kind of like a 2-for-1. If you don't want to make the cowl, you can use worsted weight and make a nice big infinity scarf. So let's get started with the instructions. You'll see that they're kind of spaced a little differently than normal, and why I did that was to make it a little bit easier to be able to read them and do them, because they're so specific for getting the varying width of chevrons. So it's a little bit easier to read when they're spaced out that way. So what it tells us first is to begin in the 4th chain from our hook, and the first 3 that we're going to skip, we don't count the loop on our hook. We have 1, 2, and 3. Those are going to count as our first double crochet. So we're going to yarn over and put our hook into the fourth chain. I'm forgetting what everything's called. And what you can do is you can either work into the back loop or 2 loops, but what I recommend, because this is not going to have an edging on it, is to work in the bottom bump. So we have the front of our stitches, which are our V's that I call them because it looks like a bunch of stacked V's. And then on the back of our chains we have what's called the bottom bump, kind of the not technical name for it, but you can see it looks like a little hash mark on each stitch. And when we work into that, so you can count, either you can do your V's and get to 4 and turn it over and you'll see your hash mark, or you can count 4 hash marks. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if I go underneath that loop and do my double crochet, so I yarn over, pull up my loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2, and yarn over, pull through the second 2, what I'm going to get is I'm going to have those V's as the bottom of my border for my chevron scarf or cowl. So working into the bottom bump takes a little bit of extra time because you have to get just under that loop, but you get a really nice finished edge. So as we're working, I'll show you how that edge looks so you can see how nice it looks, so you can decide if you want to work into that bottom bump or not. Okay, so now for the actual pattern, when we look at the pattern itself, you'll see that it kind of gets small to big and then it goes big to small, so it's a little bit of a mirror. So we're going to go double crochet in our next 2 stitches. So we're going to yarn over, go under our bottom bump, pull up our loop. If you split the yarn, pull back out and catch all of it. Then we're going to do 1 more in our next stitch, and then we're going to start our chevron, or our peaks and valleys, you can call them as well. by doing a decrease. So decrease is also the same as a DC3 together. We're going to bring the next 3 stitches into one. So I'm going to yarn over, I'm going to go under that bottom bump, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first 2, then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to start on my next stitch. So go to that bottom bump, yarn over, pull through the first 2, and stop, and then yarn over and work into that 3rd stitch. So this is going to create our valley. So now that I've worked through all 3, I'm going to yarn over and pull my hook through all the loops on my hook. So remember, point straight down at your stitches and you'll be able to pull through those nice and easy without getting stuck on any of your loops. Now my instructions tell me to go ahead and double crochet in the next 2 stitches I come to. So we're going to go under. And since this is so varying, I'm going to go through the whole row with you. Probably when I get to maybe the middle part where it's double crochet in 10 stitches, I might break the video a little bit, but we're going to work this whole first and second row together so you can make sure that you have all of it down. Now our next stitch is an increase, which is also the same as double crocheting 3 times in our next stitch. So the next bottom bump we come to, we're going to do 3 double crochets into, and that's going to create our peak. So it's going to create our little top V of our chevron. So we're going to do 3 all together. That's 2 and 3. Then we're going to have some more double crochets in our next 2 stitches. And another decrease. I'm going to show you the bottom of this as soon as I finish this decrease so you can see how the edge of it's looking. So remember, with the decrease you're using 3 stitches and turning them into 1. Okay, so now you can see that we have that nice V edge on our bottom of our cowl. So it's a lot better looking than maybe just 1 loop if you're working in 2 loops. But it's up to you, whatever you like best you can stick with. Okay, now we're increasing the width between our next chevron by doing double crochet in our next 4 stitches. So we're just doing 1 double crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. You'll see there's no repeats on this pattern because they are all different widths for every chevron in between each increase and decrease. Then after our 4, we're going to increase again. Once you do this once, you'll probably get the hang of it. You're just kind of repeating what's below you over and over again. The only difference is we're changing colors every once in a while to get the cool color changes. But we just did our increase, now we're going to double crochet 2 times in our next stitch. So you can see how it's getting a little bit wider on each upward slope right now. So now we're going to go 2 and then decrease again. So that part's kind of the same until we get to the middle of the cowl. And then we're going to reverse it and it's going to be on the down tick. We just did our decrease. Now we are on our uptick again, so we're doing double crochet in our next 6 stitches. So double crochet once in each of your 6 stitches. And this is my 6th double crochet. And you can also kind of look at, if you're forgetting what's going to be next, you can look at what you just did. So we did a decrease, and now you have to do an increase. So you don't even have to look at your pattern to see that the next thing we're doing is 3 double crochets in our next stitch. So it's not a difficult pattern repeat because I tried to make it in even, easy ascending and descending numbers. but the first row you kind of got to pay attention because you got to get everything placed correctly. So we did our increase, now we're going to double crochet in our next 2 stitches. See, I kind of use my fingers to kind of push that bottom bump over my hook. So that kind of helps get just that bottom bump in the right spot. Okay, then we're going to decrease again. You'll be a pro at increasing and decreasing by the end of this pattern. 2 and 3. Okay, and then we just did 6. So if you're if you're wondering how to count these, because I'll show you on the next row, it'll be a little bit easier to make sense. But when we're doing our chevrons, we have our increase, then we have what's in between. So if you forgot what part you're at, go to your increase and hold those 3 out of the way, and then go to your decrease, because those are all together, hold those out of the way, and then you can count the stitches in between. So you can see the nice big post. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we saw the 6, next is 8. So we're going to double crochet in our next 8 stitches. Here's number 8 of the of the double crochets. And then, remember we did a decrease, now we're doing an increase. We're almost to the middle of the cowl. So now we've just got 2 more double crochets, or 1 crochet in each of our next 2 stitches. Then we're going to decrease, and we're going to be at the middle portion of our cowl. That's going to be the longest run of double crochets. Okay, so this next portion is going to be 10 double crochets. So we're going to double crochet in our next 10 stitches, and then we're going to work back down. Okay, here's number 10. So now we're at the peak of our cowl, the center. We had decrease, so we're going to increase. And now what I mean by working down is we're kind of working backwards. So now after our increase, we're going to do another 10 double crochets. So another double crochet in each of our next 10 stitches. So you'll see on the pattern that we're reversing the order of what we just did. We're going 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2. Here's the 10th stitch on the opposite side now, so you can see that was our center of the cowl, and now we're going back down. So that was an increase, and now we're decreasing. And now we're going to do our 2 double crochets. So those come at the back end now. Oops, split that one. Gauge isn't important on this. This is the 2 double crochets, because it's just gonna, unless you're making it really tight, so if you're a really tight crocheter, then you might want to go up a hook size, because I made the cowl about 22 inches around, so that way it goes, it's nice and tight around your neck, not tight around your neck, but it's just big enough to fit over your head, because usually a adult female is 20-inch head. I have probably a 21-inch, I have a pretty big nugget, but I'm going to do some increases now, but for the cowl, if you crochet really tight, it might be a little small, might be a little snug to get over your head, so you might want to go up a hook size. Otherwise, don't worry about too much about the gauge, as long as you can fit it over your head. If you're doing worsted weight, like this yarn, then you can go ahead and not even worry about it at all, because it's going to be a scarf instead of a cowl. So we did the 2, we did our increase, and now we're doing 8 because we just did 10, so now we're going to do double crochet in our next 8 stitches. Here is number 8 of our double crochets. We just did an increase and now we're back to our decrease. So you can kind of see the pattern. Once you get going, it makes a little bit more sense. It might look a little difficult when you first read it, like what is she doing? Why does she have all these different numbers? Hopefully it's making more sense now. So we got our decrease, now we're doing 2 double crochets. So you'll see that everything is spaced with 2 double crochets. So the one side will increase, but you'll do 2 double crochets, and then the other side, so it's increasing from 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and then we're decreasing 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. But everything in between are 2 double crochets. So now we're going to increase, one, 2, and 3. And we just did 8 double crochets. Remember, just count between your increase and decrease to find out how many posts. If you put your stuff down, you're like, I do not remember which one I was on, you'll see the 8 posts. So now we're going to do 6. Number 6, so I'm going to do my decreasing. On the next row, I'm going to show you more of how you can work the repeat without the pattern, so you can easily figure out where you're at and just crochet without having to carry the pattern around with you, rather than going straight by the pattern. So now we had our decrease, now we're doing 2 double crochets. We're almost to the end. I'm sure this is way too long for you guys, but just in case, a couple of you might need to get all the way through. So we got 2, now we're ready for our increase. Then we're going to do 4 double crochets since we just did 6. So go ahead and double crochet in your next 4 stitches. Okay, I just did 4 and I'm doing a decrease. You can see the end. Promise you'll kind of catch the hang of this. By the end of the next row, you'll see how you can work this without having to look at the pattern every 2 seconds. So we have our decrease, now we're going to double crochet in our next 2 stitches. Then we're going to increase. We're at the last line of our pattern, for row 1 at least. Still got a ways to go. So now we're going to do 2 double crochets in the next stitch. And 1 in each of the next stitches. We're going to decrease. Okay, so we have 3 left. We're going to double crochet 2 times in our, I keep saying 2 times, double crochet in our next 2 stitches. And we have 1 left, and we're doing an partial increase. We're just double crocheting twice in this last stitch. This is going to even out our stitch count. So if you are missing a chain, it's time to go back and figure out where it went. You might have to remake your foundation chain, or at the very least, if you really don't mind, you could put 3 in this last stitch just to even it out, because it'll be a little bit off at the end, but if you're not super particular, if you're making it for yourself, that can work to fix that mistake. So now let's move on to row 2. Okay, so for row 2, we'll go by the pattern for a few stitches, and then I'll show you how you can kind of wing it without having to read the pattern. So it tells us to chain 3, and that's what you're going to do at the beginning of every row after this. The very first thing is a chain 3, and a double crochet in the same stitch that chain 3 came out of, so the same ending stitch here. So it's going to be kind of like our partial increase again. Then we're going to double crochet in our next 2 stitches, so we're going under both loops. You can get fancy if you want and just do the back loop or the front loop only. You'll get different effects. So if you want to switch the pattern up, you can do that. We're just going to do 2 double crochets. Then we're going to decrease, and you'll see we're at a decrease. So we want to continue our decreases. So if we did an increase here, it would look really funny. So we're going to go under both loops only, or the top loops, and do our decrease. Then we're going to double crochet in our next 2 stitches, and then we'll be placed right at the top of our previous increase. So we're at the top of our 3 stitches. This was the first one, and now we're at the middle. So we're going to do 3 inside there, or another increase. Okay, so if you want to work this without the pattern, what you're looking for is you're just remembering that you have in decrease and increases, and then in between are double crochets. So you can kind of go off of the pattern to figure out how many you're supposed to be putting in between, but if you know that each stitch has its own top 2 loops, so your decrease is here, and it always goes to the left. It's always off to the side here for that stitch. So these 3 came together into this stitch right here. So we need 3 stitches for an increase. This is going to be our middle stitch, and then we have 1 here and 1 on the opposite side. So once you get used to seeing that decrease stitch, you'll see that how many stitches you have in between. So we have 2 here, so we can just do our 2 double crochets. If you're not used to looking at stitches and kind of able to easily see where they're at, don't worry about this. This is more for the people that can spot the stitches very easily. You'll pick it up as you go, but for those, you can just stick with the pattern and it'll help you out. But this kind of helps to see if you get lost or if you put your work down, you're not sure where you're at, how to find where you're at. So now we have our 3 stitches that we're going to decrease through. There. The decrease is a little bit harder because you have to kind of spot that middle stitch for your decrease, which can be a little difficult if you don't remember if you're supposed to go to the left or to the right. But just remember, we have even number of stitches between our increase and decrease. So if you only have 1 stitch, you know you're supposed to be going to the left. So if there's only 1 double crochet between where you think your decrease should be, you know you're off. The increases are a lot easier because you have 3 easy to see stitches, and you have 1, 2, and 3. So that the middle stitch of the 3 is where you're going to make your next increase. So you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and if you read the pattern, you'll see that it says to double crochet in your next 4 stitches. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now I'm at the top of that stitch. And also it will help you to remember that this side will increase going upwards, so the other side will always be those 2 double crochets. So once you do your increase, now you know you just have to do 2 double crochets and you should be at your decrease. So as you work through, if it's not making much sense, as you keep going, it'll probably make a little bit more sense, hopefully. So now we're at our decrease. You see we have that middle stitch. So what you can do if you're not used to looking at the stitches, just take your time when you're doing the decrease and look and go, okay, that's that stitch over to the left. I can see where it's forming. And also when you make your decrease stitch, look at how you make that top loop. So watch when we pull through all of our loops. Our top loop is made with that very first one, and you can see that when we pull it, it's over here off to the thing, and then once we do our stitch, you can see how it's pulling to the left. It kind of wants to pull to the right at first, but once you get going, then you see it's right here, right above it. As we keep going, it'll kind of go more that way again. So now we're at 6 stitches. Okay, now we're at the top of our increase, do our next increase. So you can see we're just repeating what we did from the row before. Okay, I just did my increase, and now we're on the 2 double crochets again. So you can see it's pretty much just a single row repeat that we're doing, because everything kind of lines up the same, or it does line up the same, not kind of, but we do our decrease like it says in the pattern, and then we're going upwards again. So you can see, if you forget where you're at, remember to count those double crochets in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so I know that I'm doing 8 double crochets here. So you're just copying what you did the row below. It's just going over and over again. The only difference is that we're changing color at the end of some of the rows. So what you're going to see is that it says fasten off CA, or whatever color you're on, and join, or it's going to say join first. It'll say join CB, fasten off CA. So what we're going to do, I'm going to pretend this is the last stitch of my row. Actually, yeah, because there's always 2 double crochets in the last stitch, so I'll do 1, and then I'll do 2. So I'm going to go to that first step, kind of like as if I was going to do a decrease. I have 2 loops on my hook. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my new color. So let's pretend this super cool, weird purple is my color that I'm going to change to, because it's the first thing I could grab. And I'm going to lay it on my hook. So I have the 2 loops on my hook. I'm laying this new one on. I'm going to pull it through, and now I'm ready for my next row. And because you're going to be whip stitching at the end of this pattern, you can go ahead and double knot. I love double knotting. So if you want to secure it, I'm not going to double knot this because I want to be able to undo it, but you can double knot it to kind of secure it to each other for the next row. And then you're just going to take your new color and you're going to go ahead and start chaining 1, 2, and 3, and then double crochet in that first stitch again. So you have a nice color change right at the end, and then when you whip stitch it all together, you won't see the knots. If you need help with the whip stitching, I have tutorials on that, so you can watch the tutorial to see how to whip stitch this together. But that's basically it for this pattern. If you have any questions, if the extra row is not quite making sense, or any other comments or questions, go ahead and contact me, or you can leave a comment at the bottom of this video and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But thank you for watching.